Good evening, everyone. You are being recorded, so do not swear. My name is Councillor Jane Austen, and I am chairing this Overview and Scrutiny Resources meeting tonight on Tuesday, even the 8th of July. And this is my Vice Chair, Councillor Andrew Launton.
Good evening. And
I'm ably joined by Chris Harrod, helping me to my right. Thank you. We've actually, this is my first time chairing this meeting, so please, if I forget something or just let me know, and we're all friends. So it's a relatively light agenda today. There's two main items. So let's start on item one. Yeah, would all committee members like to introduce themselves, and should we do you want to introduce yourselves as well? Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Jo Knight. I'm Assistant Director of Guildford and Waverley Councils.
Hi, I'm Claire Upton Brown. I'm the Joint Assistant Director for Planning.
Hi, I'm Luke Harvey. I'm the Interim Joint Assistant Director for Strategy and Corporate Services.
Hi, I'm Jenny Sturgis, the Senior Policy Officer at Waverley.
Hi, I'm Esther Lyons, Housing Strategy and Enabling Manager at Waverley, and my job share partner Alice is up on the Zoom.
Good evening, I'm Annalisa Howson. I'm the Joint Assistant Director for Housing Services.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we have all of our committee members here tonight. No apologies. Chris, any apologies?
Just confirm, Madam Chair, no apologies this evening.
Thank you.
Somebody on there, somebody watching as well.
And we've got, is that Alice? We've got on the screen who job shares with Esther Lyons. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, Alice.
Evening. Hello. Hi.
Hi. So item 2, we've got 2 sets of minutes to approve. The first one is from the meeting held on the 26th of March. That's pages 5 to 15. Have we all taken a look at are these? Oh, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I'm perfectly happy with the minutes themselves, but could I just register my concern and dismay at the length of time that it took to produce these minutes? They were not available for the executive when they met to consider some of the matters that we had looked at. They were not available for the full council. And indeed, I produced a set of would-be minutes, which I circulated to all members prior to full council, where we were discussing budgetary items. And I just note with concern that it took so long, and I would ask that concern is noted by officers, and I would like an assurance that we will never again wait that long for a set of minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we can certainly pass that along with our recommendations. Thank you. So are those minutes approved? Any other comments? So Councillor Barker-Lomax.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted to look at the minutes for 13th May, and under smart targets on page 16, bottom of 16, it says Councillor Barker-Lomax felt that there was a lack of smart targets, whereas I wanted to recommend that actually the papers that are submitted to us with KPIs are smart targets. It wasn't just a feeling; it was a recommendation, and that it should be added to the is it the action sheet? I think is that the action sheet? Is that where the recommendations go?
Thank you. We're just checking.
Action sheets on page 27.
Just bear with us one moment.
Zoe, could you clarify exactly what you mean by smart
Oh,
targets,
yes.
not
Yeah,
what
no,
the
it's,
definition is of it? Thank you.
So, sorry, it's management speak. I don't remember exactly what the acronym stands for, but essentially it's, you have specific, measurable, accurate, something like that, reasonable, time limited. So then you say, we're expecting to decrease litter by 10% within the next 6 months. It's not just we're trying to reduce litter.
It has to have a target element into it of some sort, not just we would like to see this
Yes.
happen. Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Martin.
I think on the next page, in the next paragraph, it says that Luke Harvey explained that these will be included as part of the quarterly corporate performance reports, which are against the action plan. So that was what was going to be done, as far as I understood.
Okay, so would we not expect to see that in the action sheet?
I would have thought not. That would be something which would be taken offline and put into the corporate performance reports. We look at performance reports every quarter, and I think it was a comment in those, could we please have something extra? There are one or two things in this month's corporate or this quarter's quarterly performance reports which incorporated our recommendations from last time. I can't remember whether it specifically takes what you said here, but I would have thought we would cover it in that, and we wouldn't have a separate item in the action plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And I don't see how what you've just described is different to the actions that we've listed here.
Okay. Well, I think it's probably something we should bring up in when we look at the Q4 performance reports. Why haven't we incorporated the KPIs that you asked for?
Okay, let's look at that. And then also, I think the question is whether the minutes are a correct reflection of what you actually said. So you feel that you'd said recommended rather than,
Yes.
so how does the committee feel about asking for the minutes to be amended to reflect what Zoe said?
Happy for that.
Thank you.
Agreed, thank you. Chris, could that be recorded?
And then it should be under recommendations made in the action sheet.
And we'll look at changing it on the action sheet as well. Thank you. Thank you, councillor Barker-Lomax. Any other comments on those minutes? Right, approved? Thank you. We have another set of minutes now, which were the 13th of May, 2005. And pages 15 to 26. You've all had a good look at them, I'm sure. Any comments? No, agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item number 3, are there any declarations of interest? None. Okay, thank you. Items number 4, there have been no questions from members of the public tonight. And item 5, we have not received any questions from members either. So we move on to the first of the two, the committee work programme now, item 6. So let's take a look. That's pages 27. So I just, I know how hard we all worked to make our recommendations in this meeting. So it was good to see them all recorded on the sheet here. The executive, they were made to the executive, a number of them, and have been noted. Items 1, 2, and 3. Item 4 was made to overview and scrutiny services. It is to be considered, Waverley Training Services is to be considered in September this year. So that's proceeding. Item number 5, again, O&S Services. It was considered, that's the grounds maintenance contract. It has been considered, and the executive, it went to executive yesterday and will come to full council next week. So thank you all for pushing that. Item number 6, overspend of the planning department. Again, overview and scrutiny services, agreed that and agreed to monitor it. And item number 7, which is again about Waverley Training Services, and that is overview and scrutiny services. And is that a repeat of item number 4?
Very closely linked, but they were two separate recommendations.
Closely linked, but 2 separate recommendations. So again, that's to be recommended, that's to be taken forward by overview and scrutiny services in September. So there we are. We have some recommendations this time. So if we move on to page part 3 of 4, upcoming items. So to be considered. So tonight we've got items 1 and 2 in front of us. Number 3, Oxford Ridge End of Project Review, 1st of September. That is to be considered. 4 and 5 and 6, I believe, are all to be considered at the next scrutiny meeting. We've had some questions in. Councillor Martin, do you want to go further and talk about that?
Well, yes, if I may, just on item 3 on this page, the Oxford Ridge End of Project Review, it's something which we've been asking for a very long time. I'm surprised it's been pushed back to September now. This was completed last year, I think, sometime. So why is it taking so long to give us an end of project review on this? So I absolutely hope that it will be presented in September, and will be somewhat dismayed if it's not. I'm very concerned that in this meeting, we're not seeing the 4th quarter budget monitoring. Why have we not seen that this quarter? I see it's going to come in September. Why are we going to be looking in September at the results for the 31st of March, which is, they're going to be 6 months old by the time we look at them. What's taking so long? Why are they not here today? And the property investment quarterly report is also not on this agenda. Why not? It's a standard thing which we always have on our agenda item. I see it's in for September, but I'm disappointed that we're not seeing that today. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, item 4, the quarter 4 financial report. I understand it's largely down to officer leave, and it was just a case of the opportunity hadn't arisen to prepare the report. It's not really for me to comment any further, but as I say, I understand it was down to officer leave. In respect of the it was the end of project review that you highlighted. Yes, it is unfortunate that it was delayed. However, we are, as on the work programme, it is due to be coming to September. And also on the property investment quarterly report, if you cast your minds back to March, when we had the last one, there was a request for a workshop which has yet to take place. There was a complication arising in actually having it planned, and as the progress with that hasn't happened, it was thought that ultimately the same questions would come up that sparked the request for the workshop initially. And so again, the proposal is that one gets delayed until September. Nothing to add.
Thank you. I hear that, but that's a bit tame, frankly. And I think we should still have had a report whether the workshop took place or not. And I think that that ought to have been available for us. And I'm a little concerned that we haven't moved to get that done. And frankly, on the budget outturn, I think it's going to be pretty poor when we look at the year-end performance in September. I mean, it's just not right. We should be looking at that at this meeting, and I think we should. I would recommend that the chairman directs our concern that we should be looking at something in September, which is going to be 6 months old, when we ought to be looking at it now. And I think that's, I'm not happy with that. So could we communicate our concern that is that?
I think that's a very fair point that you've raised, Peter. Does anyone else have any other comments to express?
Yeah, just following on number 5 and the quarterly report, we just said that one has been delayed by 3 months. So when we look at September, will we get 2 quarters so that we're actually catching up rather than just always being further and further behind?
Thank you for your comments. I'll certainly pick that up with the finance team and talk to them about making sure there's 2 reports come at the next meeting so that you do catch up. It's our intention that you have all the information as you can, as quick as possible. I think the focus was on closing the accounts within the statutory deadline, and it was capacity at the time. But we'll make sure going forward that we do our best to get things to you sooner.
I mean, in theory, there'd be no reason why we couldn't have this most recent quarters sooner than the September meeting to review, potentially. We're going to check that. So I think we've got some comments to make in that we're going to request, obviously we want to make sure we get the next 2 quarters, and we would, as a committee, would like to express our disappointment that we're not seeing the reports this quarter, and we'd like to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Is everyone agreed? Thank you. Councillor Barker-Lomax.
Thank you. Something I've been asking for about 2 years now, and I thought, well, now's my chance. I would really like to see the financial reports in Excel format, because then I can play with the numbers, I can look at the underlying algorithms and understand what's, spot the patterns, see what's going on. I've been asking for it for a long time, never get it. And I wondered if maybe we could add it to the recommendations list.
I'm very happy with that. Is that something that's achievable? Yes. Is everyone agreed? Yes, agreed. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Is there anything else that we want to consider adding to our upcoming work programme as a committee? Any other items that we are concerned about?
Just going back to Chris's point on the workshop, is that something which is going to happen or not? No.
It is on my radar. Quite honestly, I haven't had the opportunity to look at it yet. However, it is something that I'm very much aware needs to be organised, and I will be endeavouring to get that sorted for early September if possible. What I should just add on that forward work plan is actually the date of the 1st September should actually read the 23rd of September.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Yes, the meetings had to be moved, hasn't it? Just making a note of that. Okay, so we've got 3 recommendations there, and Maxine, thanks. Councillor Gale, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's the first time I've been on this particular committee, and so far all I'm hearing is people aren't getting enough time to do anything. We've just been through a few reports here, and well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 8 people haven't had time to do. And is this because we are short-staffed, or are our staff being diverted to other projects when they should be concentrating on this? To get a quarterly report in 6 months is really not what you would expect. And I don't think any big businesses would expect to see a quarterly report in 6 months. So is there a question to be asked? Are our staff struggling? Do they have too much on their plates? And maybe somebody could come and tell us if there is a big issue.
I think that's an absolutely reasonable question. Let's put that to our Democratic Services team. I don't intend to put you on the hot spot right at this moment, Chris, but I think it's not reasonable that we wouldn't want a response to that, because we all prepare hard for these meetings, and we want to see the numbers. And I think actually on that recommendation, we should try and see if we can see this quarter's report before we absolutely have to in a quarter's time. I'm very interested to see what it says. So let's make sure we ask for that, please, Chris, if that's okay.
Could we put a date on it, Madam Chairman? Could we ask for it sort of say by the end of the month? Could it be circulated to us before the end of the month, before the summer?
Yeah, we're on the 8th of July. Should we put a long stop date of the 30th of July request to see that report? So that's the quarterly the property investment quarterly report, and then the budget outturn reports.
See whether Joe thinks that's achievable.
Do we think that's achievable?
I will have to check with the team, but I don't see why not. I will confirm the team after year end. We've lost a couple because they've gone on annual leave. But next week when they're back, I will certainly confirm it and come straight back to you.
Thank you. That's appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Gale.
Yeah, sorry, just back to that. I mean, we lose staff on annual leave. Well, that's only a couple of weeks. And we're talking here that we're waiting a 6-monthly turnaround. So there must be some sort of underlying problem somewhere that our staff just don't have the resources to do this work. I think we ought to ask that question if somebody can come back to us on it.
I agree. Have you made a note of that, Chris? Would that be acceptable? I mean, I think that might be a question for one of the senior officers, or even the CEO, to respond to. Okay. No. Okay. Leave that with us, Maxine. I'll make sure that that gets actioned. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Just continuing on page 30, item 8, transformation and collaboration. This item, it says, needs to be rescoped. I guess with LGR happening and all the other things, it will have to be rescoped. I think in our budget review in February, expressed some concern as to whether this was all worthwhile because LGR was going to overtake everything. And at the time, everybody said, oh, no, we've still got to carry on with transformation and doing all these collaborative things. That perhaps is not the case. Where are we? Are we going to see anything on that? Is that to be combined with LGR? Do we forget all about it? It's still a pretty big plank in the expected achievement for the budget for this particular year, which we still have to get done and adhere to. So where are we with transformation, collaboration, and then the implications arising from LGR?
Thanks. As a committee, I think that's a good question to ask. When will it be rescoped by? What will it be rescoped to? When will we see it? Councillor Weldon.
I disagree here with Councillor Martin. The fact is that the Waverley and Guildford districts will still exist for another 2 years almost, and thereafter they will be merged with the other districts. The collaboration needs to continue, and there's no reason to pause it. Thank you.
Councillor Martin just said he agrees, but he expects it's not going to happen. I think the question for us is, this is an upcoming item. It needs to be rescoped. When are we going to see it is the question. And, you know, what form will it take? So. Okay, we've agreed we'll take that on offline and then I'll provide an update to the committee. Thanks. Right. I think that is agenda item 6 done. So let's move over to agenda item 7, the corporate performance reports. Just a reminder to myself, as much as to all of you, that we are doing from page 63 onwards. So it's D1 to 11, decent and affordable homes. And also in a moment, then we'll move on to page 75, R1 to R6, well-managed council. So. Councillor Weldon.
Not a question, a simple procedural note. I'm not sure whether, I'd like to thank whoever is responsible for the way this was done in the past in this committee. I found it difficult to work out what was for us and what was for services. And I think laying it out in this way is just lovely. Thank you very much, whoever did it.
Agreed. Councillor Murray.
Chair. Is this also Q4 24-25? So this is also 6 months old, this report we're looking at today. Can I just ask that question, confirm that?
That's correct. Would you like to confirm? Thanks.
So this is Q4 24-25, but that period is actually January to March 25. So it's not actually 6. It is the most recent report.
Okay, thanks. Councillor, sorry. Oh, I will get better at this, I promise.
Thank you, Chair. Page 87, subject access requests. It says that there's been a drop 62.5% compliance in Q4. And one of the reasons it states is that there was a considerable amount of time required to carry out complex redactions on documents. And I'm going to sound like a broken record here because I've mentioned this a few times, but there's actually no requirement to provide documents when you're replying a subject access request. It's just a case of providing the actual data that we hold, name, email address, telephone number, that sort of thing. I thought that had been taken on board, hence we saw an increase in Q3. And I was just wondering whether that could be looked at and see if we can revisit that to make sure we comply moving forward, because it's obviously a risk if we're not complying in terms of reprimands and fines from the ICI.
Okay, thanks. So yes, we'll do the R's first. So does any officer have, yes, thanks. Do you want to comment? Thanks.
I can't provide an answer on your question, but what I can do is speak to the relevant team and come back to you with a written response.
Okay, Councillor Higgins, is that okay? Thanks. Councillor Barcoloma.
Can I just check? So should these sort of delayed data protection and FOIA requests, I mean, it seems to me that there are 3 areas where we're at risk of ICO decision or enforcement. I mean, should that not be then highlighted to us on the risk committee?
It is, and that's why I raised it audit committee. I've previously raised it in O&S, so that's why I sound like a broken record, but thank you.
Excellent. As we're still on this aspect, does anyone have any other comments on any of these indicators they want to make? Councillor Barcolomax.
Yeah, so with regards to D4 to 7, and we see that.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, are we on D or on R? I thought you said we would go to R.
Apologies.
We started with R and then we. So
if that's okay, we'll start on R for now. So hold fire for now, if that's okay on that one. Councillor Higgins, you raised a very good question in R12. Should we move backwards or should we start at R1 and then move forwards? Let's start at R1. Jenny, would you like to introduce it?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is the Q4 24-25 report, which is for the period January to March 25. We are looking at decent and affordable homes and a resilient and well-managed council. I'm happy to respond to questions, or any of the officers here will, if we are able to. Otherwise, I'll provide a written response. I'd also like the committee to note that we are currently reviewing the KPIs presented within this report, and we do hope to engage with this committee and the services committee ahead of Q1 25-26, ahead of the presentation of this report.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Right, let's start at the beginning then. Does anybody have any concerns on complaints by service area? Any comments? Level 2 complaints by service area. R3 total staff turnover. And total staff turnover by service area. Is that a new? Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Just on R3 and R4, I think we see an improvement here, but the turnover continues to remain high, particularly within the democratic services area and HR. And that's a continued concern. I thought that in democratic services, we were now actually up to speed and fully staffed. Is that not the case, or is that the case? Is my first question on that. I'll come back with others.
Thank you. is anyone able, Chris, are you able to answer that? He's going to have a go.
There remain some challenges within the team. We are in a process trying to resolve that, which we hope will be reflected in the next report.
So does that mean that you're not fully staffed, or you are fully staffed, but you want more than the full staff budget that you've got?
We're not fully staffed, no.
Could I get
Next
on?
question, go on.
On R4, this is very helpful. Last time we asked that we would see the actual number of employees registered. In the last report, we only saw the bottom table, which is the resignation and total turnover figures, and so it was difficult to understand. If you saw a huge turnover, but there are only 3 people, then that's clearly very different to if it's 43 people. So understanding the context with the number of employees, for me, is a very big step forward, and thank you for that. I greatly appreciate it. The only concern I've got really now is when I look at the bottom section, which I can see is going downwards in terms of the most challenging total turnover at 50%, going down to 0 in the regeneration and economic development. But I'm having some difficulty understanding how the bottom table relates to the top table. For instance, with the democracy and governance, transformation and people in the bottom table, which are quite high. Where do I see those in the top table? Which areas do they cover? So I'm still a little confused in that. And also, in terms of the percentages, is it for the year that we're looking at, the total turnover and resignation turnover? Are the figures relevant to the year, or are they relevant to the quarter? So is it a year-to-date figure as at the 31st of March, or is it the figure for the 3 months of Q4? I imagine it's for the whole year, but I'd just like some clarification on that, please.
I'm not sure. Have we got anyone in the room who can actually answer that question? No. So I think we're going to have to take that and ask for a written response on that one. I also just wanted to agree with you that, yes, it's a bit frustrating. The two don't seem to completely match up with each other, and flag obviously this democracy and governance resignation turnover of 29.41%. Again, that feels quite high, as does the transformation resignation turnover, and it would be good to understand a little bit more of that if we possibly could, if that could be noted. Thank you. Any other comments from anybody? Councillor MacLeod.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I just think it would be helpful if we could see the number of vacancies in each area as well as the number of employees, so we can see what this staff complement is meant to be. Because Chris said that you were understaffed, so it'd be nice to know what the actual vacancies are in your area and all other areas as well.
Councillor Lawton and then Councillor Gale.
Just following on from Councillor MacLeod's comments, actually, Democratic Services has gone from 28 to 32 to 40, and yet we still seem to be the vacancies going up. Does that mean that the department's growing very fast, but demand is even greater? I don't know whether you're able to answer that, Chris.
I'll give it a shot. I think ultimately the democracy and governance team it's not just democratic services. It also includes the new governance team as well. It could also include the elections team. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it's not just your direct.
Okay. Sorry. Does anyone want to comment?
Yeah, it's not just your direct kind of democratic services officers. It is a wider team.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, councillors, for your comments on this. I think this is it's a good illustration of where I think additional context and placing this into that context will help understand and appraise performance. I think the figures that we've got, the two tables, the presentation is slightly confusing, but in effect what we've got, the top table on R4 gives you a flavour of how many employees are in each function. This is where we get into kind of HR system terminology, because as Chris has described, the democratic services team is part of that function. And there was also recently a restructure where things have moved around slightly in terms of posts, which can create some potential discrepancies, or perhaps more accurately, difficulty in interpreting these figures. And this is something we were going to pick up in the KPI review actually, and Councillor MacLeod, your points noted around, for instance, vacancy rates may well be useful to provide the committee to place this in a bit of a background, that context that I described earlier. These numbers can be tricky to interpret though. So what we'll pick up with the committee at that workshop is how you would like to see them, and anything else we can provide that would give you a more rounded view. But I guess where there are issues, it goes back to that point where there's been some restructures that have taken place in the year, and what we've had to, rather than take that snapshot and retrospectively adjust it at the end of the year, it's a snapshot at that moment in time when the structure was what it was, if that makes sense, which can explain sometimes the errant numbers. Things have settled down structurally now though in most of the departments, which will be reflected as these numbers go through. But I think there's just a general point on presentation where at all possible, fewer tables that provide the same information, so you can just look across and potentially color code and use graphs as well. So
yeah, I mean, I think we may need something landscape with everything just along the same line, because at the moment they're not even in the same order, so it makes it quite difficult to compare. So thank you, Luke, for noting that. Councillor Martin.
Sorry, Luke, did you then confirm that these figures are for a year? For instance, if we look at joint chief executive and strategic directors, there are 5 employees at the end of the year, 31st of March 2025. During the course of the year, there was a 50% turnover. I'm not quite sure how we get to 2.5, but the resignation turnover was a quarter during the year, or was that's the only way I can make sense of the numbers. Is that right?
So as I understand it, but I think we just need to double check. This is the position cumulatively at the end of the quarter 4. So is that right? Yeah, so it's the cumulative position as of the end of Q4 for that financial year.
Yes, but in terms of the resignation percentages and the turnover percentages, they surely are relevant to the year to date as at the end of Q4, not for the Q4 by itself.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. That's what I meant. Sorry. So it's the position at the end of the year for the whole year. Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to take Councillor Gale in a second. It just it feels like we just need to label these things correctly. So we're defining what these percentages actually relate to, and we need to make sure also that we take on board Councillor MacLeod's point, because I think that is a good one about vacancies. Councillor Gale.
Sorry, just confused a little on this. Are these staff members strictly Waverley or Waverley Guildford, or just Guildford, or I don't know whether Democratic Services figure covers Waverley and Guildford employees, or is it just Waverley employees? So I think if we had some clarity there, because some of these must still just be Guildford and must still just be Waverley, and it would be quite nice to know this is just Waverley, or even the strategic directors.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have it equated to full-time employees. So it's for Waverley. But Luke, perhaps you can confirm that's correct. Yes, so it's apportioned as full-time employees. So the time allocated to each council. So it's for Waverley only. We need to define that on the sheet, don't we? Councillor Martin.
And finally, we've been talking about the structure of the report rather than looking at what the report says, which is, I think we need to do both. I do note with continued concern the high level of resignation, turnover and total turnover in democracy and governance, which is a growing area, which comes back to the point that we've made about data being late, minutes not being ready, and so on and so forth. So I would ask that we have a resolution expressing our concern of the committee at the high turnover in the democracy and governance areas, and link that to some of the concerns that we have about the slowness of the production of minutes and the general performance level in this area. And I would propose that as a note of concern and a request that that gets sorted pretty quickly, because I think as a committee, we've suffered from that lack of performance.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. I would agree. Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Looking further down, there's a further table, R8, which is contractors or agency workers. And again, they can be employed, I would imagine, for two reasons. One is to temporarily fill vacancies, or sometimes to provide skills that we don't want to employ somebody to do because we only want it for a short period of time or something like that. It'd be nice to see all that in the same table, actually.
Yeah.
And understand which of these agency workers are there just to fill vacancies and which of them are there for a short time to provide a specific skill. Because I think both happens as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, isn't it? If we've got vacancies, as you've made the point, what proportion of those vacancies are being filled by temporary contract staff? And is there any remaining vacancy after that point? So I think that is a good resolution, really. To there's two there, aren't there? So there's Councillor Peter Martin, which concern about a high turnover of staff in those departments and of legal and democratic services, and related to concerns about minutes and performance, and then further concerns about basically the layout of the information that we're receiving and being able to relate R4 to R8. So it's a request for presentationally some quite significant changes, and to ensure that we understand really what the actual capacity of all of these departments is, and if there's any vacancies remaining unfilled by contract staff. Is everyone agreed that we should resolve that?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Who's the recommendation?
Oh, well, that would be, who would the recommendation be to? Oh, that's a good question. Who would we recommend that to? Oh, Luke, help me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to pick the recommendation as officer. We're in the process of reviewing the KPIs as I described, and at that workshop that we're trying to get in the diary, we can talk about it in a little bit more detail. From a constitutional perspective, as the indicators are of the executive, I'd suggest that your observation can be made to the executive, who will then pick it up. But as it's a fairly, although important, but fairly minor change in presentation, I'm sure it's fine that we can pick up in subsequent reports. Currently, the performance report isn't taken to the executive in public session, but from Q1 we do aim to do that. So that will be your route for those comments and observations.
Okay, Chris, is that noted then? It's to the executive for the officer team to action. Thank you. Do we have any other comments on, we've done, we've commented on R4, we've got some more from Councillor Martin.
Could we move on to R5, please? On page 80. Again, I should know the answer to these questions, but I'll ask it anyway. Again, are we looking, these figures relate to now just the Q4, so that if I understand it correctly, if there are around about 60, 65 working days in the Q4, we had absence of 7.55 days, which with my maths means that, if I understand it rightly, 12% of our staff are away sick on any given day on average. Is that right? Have I got that right? When we are looking at the number of days in the quarter and the number of days of sickness in the quarter, and have I got that expressed correctly, please?
Luke, would you mind responding?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. So yes, this indicator is the rolling period for a year. So it's a snapshot taken at the end of the quarter, looking back in the preceding 12 months. So it rolls each quarter. It's
okay, so it's 7.55 days for the year to the end of March 2025. So it's 7.55 days divided by the 250 working days as a whole, which would of course make it only 2 or 3%. Is that right?
Yes, I'm not quite as quick as the percentages with you there, but I'll take your word for it. But I would just add also that this is it's a standard HR metric that is comparable with other councils because most record it in this way.
Thanks, but as I say, when I see these numbers, I always have to think about, are we talking about a year's? Because sometimes we're looking at quarters figures and sometimes we're looking at year-to-date figures. It would be helpful, I think, to put on that we're looking at 12
Councillor
months.
Martin, it does actually show that on the graph.
It says rolling 12
Yeah.
months, but I'm never quite sure what, I still
Okay.
want to be sure that that is the case.
Okay. Councillor Murray.
Councillor Martin, could you just clarify that? Because now I'm all confused. So, or Luke, if you would, is it 3% or is it 12%? I still, I think after all that, I didn't get to.
By my maths, it's 7.55 days divided roughly by 250 days a year. So that's what we're looking at.
Question I want to ask is what's the staff staff absence percentage? And use 3% on average.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. I think so the particular metrics that's been used, there are nuances in how it's calculated, and it can be sometimes you can possibly draw a slightly incorrect conclusion from taking one and then dividing it by another. And well, I'm not an HR professional, so I'd be kind of ill-advised to be able to what's the most appropriate metric to use. HR go with this because it's comparable with other authorities and organisations. I'm not sure, and I have to check with the relevant officer whether you are able to simply divide that by the total number of working days, if that does indeed give you an accurate reflection. Because what this is something of an aggregate measure too, so it measures short and long term. So can you leave that with us? We'll provide we'll check in with the relevant AD and provide a written answer. I'm not suggesting that it's wrong to do that. I just want to make sure that we have the accurate information to appraise this in the round, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. I think it would be useful to understand a benchmark of what all councils' vacancy rate, stove till stack sickness is. Is that red line? Oh, so that says target. Is that an average of all councils, or that? If you could confirm that too, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So the target. Not all councils are the same. So, for instance, for Waverley, some services where staff typically may be unwell more than others. So, neighbourhood-based services, refuse workers, street cleaners, etc. Those services aren't in-house at Waverley, which means that you would expect, in my experience, lower levels of sickness and office-based staff tends to be the rule, although there are obviously exceptions to the rule. So targets in local government can be difficult because you don't always compare like for like. The target that's been set is one that colleagues in HR have set alongside service management as a level that you would expect, and it is aligned with comparable organisations such as Waverley. But as I say, you do tend to find where services like refuse and street cleaning, green spaces, where they're contracted out, you do tend to find sickness is lower, because those sorts of roles being out in the cold can cause cold and flu, but also issues with musculoskeletal issues like your back and things like that. But in terms of benchmarking, we will pick this up when we have the workshop, because we also benchmark with some other Surrey authorities. Again, sometimes imperfect comparators, but there are other platforms too that we can use to compare it against, not just public sector, but also private sector operations.
Okay, I mean, I'm very excited about this KPI benchmarking session upcoming. Does anyone else have any more comments? I think we need to keep going if possible, otherwise we'll be on the R's all night. Any other comments? Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly confused, as no doubt a lot of other people are with these statistics, about what is long-term sickness and what nature is that, are they long-term sickness? And if I can jump ahead to R6, Chair, where we have in community services, somebody who seems to be permanently on long-term sickness. If that's the case, I'm not They're probably quite understandable reasons, but that completely distorts any of the statistics or analysis which we're looking at. So I think there are two questions there. Luke, if you could probably help me out. One of which is, what is long-term sickness? And possibly an explanation of this permanent community services long-term sickness.
Luke, you okay? I think we've made like a appendix of definitions of all of these different things. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So long-term sick usually is absence that lasts more than 7 working days. There can be a variety of reasons for staff being on long-term sick, some which are completely out of the control of the authority to manage particular chronic issues, or indeed very sad issues like cancer and things like that. So long-term sickness is typically longer than 7 days, as the theory goes that short-term sickness, fewer than 7 days in one instance, is something that can usually be managed through adjustments to working conditions and practices. So yes, greater than 7 days. I will double check that though, but that's usually the statutory definition of long-term sick. And sorry, could you just repeat the question around community services? My laptop.
Yeah, the other one is, if we have under community services somebody who seems to be permanently on long-term, that would destroy, that would sort of undermine the actual validity of some of the statistics. If somebody is, got a long-term illness, I don't know, identified with ME or cancer, and requires a long-term treatment which will keep them off work, but will be still on the payroll or in our establishment. Do we have people like that? And if so, should we not be taking them out of the statistics analysis?
Over to you, Luke.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I think it would be inappropriate. I don't have the detail to comment on specific cases around long-term sick. The council has, as with every local authority and public sector organisations, and for private sector organisations for that matter, has a sickness absence policy that is followed, and colleagues in HR look after that alongside service managers. I think that your comment though, whether certain instances of sickness where clearly it's something like cancer, which is terribly unfortunate, and we wouldn't want to be pushing people to come back to work where they are unwell. Cases like that may be best removed from the statistics, but clearly those people do need to be looked after by the authority, as we have a duty of care. So perhaps we can take to go away and speak to HR as to whether there is it's possible to do that, and whether it would be wise. I don't have the detail of those particular cases to hand though, but I'm happy on a policy note to go back to HR and find out what the position is. Thank you.
Luke.
I'd be appreciated if you could do something like that.
Thank you for your question. I think we do need to keep going, otherwise we'll be here all night. So, but I think that you've got a very clear mandate, Luke, to really sort all this out and make sure that we know exactly what these stats refer to and the background detail, if that could be provided. Right, next, anyone? Let's move on to R7. Any other comments on recruitment? Zoe?
Yeah, given that it's taking us 500 days to recruit people in assets and property, should we be paying more? And our contractor ratios in that division are very high. Assets and property 1.9 ratio, and that's under R8 to 1. So the bottom of page 83 there. And then that will incur extra costs anyway, because contractors are more expensive. So should we not just be paying more for employees to shorten the time to employ, plus to reduce the ratio of contractors that we need?
Right. I mean, I think there's certainly the question that we need to be asking is, I'm not sure there's anyone here who is sort of able to respond to that, but Claire.
Can I maybe just guide this evening? I mean, there is a well-known issue around the recruitment and retention of professional staff across local government and within Waverley and Guildford. So perhaps that's something that HR could just give you a little more detail on, the areas across the council, which are multiple, where we are struggling to recruit, particularly professional, chartered surveyors, chartered planners, environmental health officers, and the impact that that is having. But we haven't got anybody here that can go into the specific details around the property team, and nor would I want to go there. But there is that, sort of underlying problem across local government and within most local authorities, and particularly in Waverley and Guildford.
Thank you. That's helpful. It might be helpful for us to have someone come to the next meeting to explain some more of the detail of that. Would you be supportive of that? Yeah, great. Can we request that, please? Thank you. Councillor Gale.
Yes, I think that's a really good idea because, we really don't know the aspects of where we're trying to recruit people and what the shortfalls are. And I noticed that Claire says particularly in Guildford and Waverley, is there a reason for this? Could it be that the LGR is making people not wish to come and work for councils at the moment? So are we looking at a bit of a lull in people coming forward? So information on that, I think, would be really useful. Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone's agreed, let's definitely try and get that scheduled in, please. Chris, thank you. Any other comments? If we'll keep moving on, I think. No. Should we move over to, let's have a look, council tax collection, business rates collection, R11 invoices paid, R12, Councillor Higgins is all over that one already, so that's fine. And let's move over to the Ds then, which start on page 64. Thank you. So we'll start at the beginning. I'm opening the floor. Thank you. Councillor Barker-Lomax.
I've raised this in several meetings now. So we look at the lack of responsiveness, we look at the lack of client happiness and in other D sections. And it does seem to me that we as a council should, really learn from this, that first of all, we should have got competition in this tender. And I know that takes 18 months to do, but we should have done it. But secondly, my understanding is that the contract terms for the company that we use are quite binary. You either pay them for their services or you end the contract. And I'm told by councillors who were here at the time that we had suggested that there would be sanctions for delays in delivery or, unhappy tenants. And those were rejected on the basis that we can terminate the contract if we're not happy with the service. But that's a nuclear option. And we know it takes about 18 months to do the tender process. And so I think we as a council should have a capper here where we learn from the situation that we find ourselves in. And first of all, we should have a policy that we always have competition for major delivery contracts. And secondly, that our contracts are non-binary in the non-sexual way, whereby we can have sanctions and not just a nuclear option. So there should be fines or, recharge interest or whatever it is.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Annalisa, would you be able to respond to that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So just to assure you, there was competition when we selected our current responsive repairs and voids contractor. We have to go through a rigorous procurement process, which, as you say, can take up to 18 months and beyond. I'd like to say, we recognise, it's well recognised the issues we've had with the contractor and the work we've put in. And I think Councillor Lawton can confirm that as you said, this data was from March 2025. We're now coming to look at the end of June data, and definitely the data we've shared with the Landlord Services Advisory Board during April and May has seen an increase in performance in all the areas. So the work that we've been doing in partnership to improve the service is now now demonstrating itself. So we have got that improvement. And we will continue to work with that. And some of the KPIs we've got, like the average length of time for a void or the average time taken for a job to be completed, is impacted by the fact that we had a backlog. So as we work through, there was a peak and now we're getting through. And at the moment, we've just got 30 jobs that are outstanding outside of 28 days, which earlier in the year was much higher. So I'd like to give you assurance that there has been movements this report, and I am sorry we haven't got the Q1 report to share with you, but we are sharing monthly data with the Landlord Services Advisory Board. That information is available online. We do have representative there, and I hope that that can give you some confidence about the work that we've been doing.
Just going to let Andrew comment and then we'll come back to.
Thank you, Annalise. So yes, I can concur. I must admit, as a member of the Landlord Services Board, there's definitely been an improvement, and the amount of red is slowly going down, which is great to see. I think going back to Zoe's other comment about the appointment of the contractor in the first place, the view is taken that, and Annalisa, correct me if I'm wrong, that because it's up for review in 2 years' time, council made a decision to persevere with the current Ian Williams, who's the current contractor. And we do know that the contract is what it is. I think I understand there's a consultant now on board who is going to be helping with the review of that in the next 2 years. Is that correct? But going back to the first point, there's definitely some improvement. So when we meet again, we should be seeing a lot fewer reds.
Okay, yeah, thank you both. As we are looking at these stats, I have to say I was pretty concerned. So I think that's reflected by committee members. Shall I take Councillor Barker-Lomax first, come back, and then Councillor Murray?
Yeah, thank you. So, and I'm sorry for the confusion. When I'm talking about competition, I don't mean at the tender stage. I mean, once we've tendered, we choose 2 suppliers, and then whoever's performing the best, we give more work to. There needs to be an incentive for them to deliver. I've come to this committee for 2 years now, and every time these metrics are in red. And it's for 2 reasons, I think. One is that there isn't competition, but 2, we had a contract which was oversimple, didn't have sanctions in for non-performance, you know, and we should have a policy as a council that these kind of contracts do have sanctions for non-performance, and that we have competition, you know, post-tender competition.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think we know we've been going through that discussion for the last 2 years. And I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. And I wasn't happy that we just had one contractor who seemed to have the job, whether he did a good job or not. But Annalisa's team has moved on quite a lot from there. And I think there's going to be some good, I think we're moving the right way.
I think we need to we'll keep talking, but I think we need to maybe think about putting that into a recommendation towards the end. I'm just trying to work out how. Can I go to Councillor Murray and then Councillor Gale and then Councillor Nicholson? Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm pleased to hear, Annalisa and Andrew, that the figures are moving in the right direction. I know, you know, we've been on this committee for 2 years and we've seen it, and I know how concerned you have been, and everybody in here can see that. So, you know, that will be really, really good. I think the number one element is on D5, and whether you can move that tenant satisfaction score. I think that is the key thing. That should be the golden thing. If you can get that into green, that will be what everybody wants. And this is what everybody should be aiming for. So that would be the key focus. If I can make another comment, I was a little bit concerned when you were talking about changing, looking at KPIs, re-looking at them. What happened when we changed the KPIs on D3 about responsive repairs, about the average day? The target was 7 originally. In 23, 24, we changed the KPI to 15. And then guess what? It went to 18. So the thing went up. As you move the KPI from 7 to 15, you then, the target, the actual also went up and doubled. And the ratio between the two is is still stubbornly the same. So it'd be nice if, you know, if it was going down, it's never going to get to 7, which it was in 2023. It's now nearer around 50. And if we get it down to 15 and it will go into green, it will still be twice as bad as it was in 2023. So I think I wasn't happy when we changed that KPI from 7 to 15. I thought I know you thought, well, we're never going to meet that. It's an unrealistic target and we need to have a target which is somehow achievable. And I got that. But I think if we're looking at moving KPIs because they're not an achievable target, but this average number of days to complete a repair is fundamental to the tenant satisfaction. And if you move that goalpost fundamentally, or move some other goalposts which affect the tenant satisfaction, I think it will be a big mistake for the council. So that is my feeling on KPIs. We've got it, and like I say, Annalise, I know you and your team have done great work on it. I'm really pleased to hear. The September O&S meeting will be fundamental to see. Even if you've got them in amber, it'll be good, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. So good luck to that. But please think about the KPIs when you're not moving them too far.
Okay, I think we may have a second recommendation brewing there. Councillor Murray. Now, who was next? Councillor Gale.
Just on what Councillor Bartholomax was saying with the contractors, we've seen new contractors come on board many times that are employed by Waverley for housing construction and repairs, and they're all the same people. The vans just have a different name on them, I'm afraid. And if you speak to people locally who are living in our houses, they say, but they sent Harry again. It's the same guy and it's still as bad. And so I don't know how we get over that, but it just appears that we put this out to tender and some other person comes along with a different name and we award the contract, and then all the vans have their sign writing done and all the people continue to work. We've got to, at some point, we've got to say that the standard of employment of these companies has to be higher. And I think that is the problem. It's not who we award the contract to, it's who they are employing, which is our problem. And the other thing that Councillor Murray was saying, yes, that's the satisfaction level we're looking for, is the satisfaction of the people living in the homes. I don't want more telephone calls from people telling me they've got 3 sets of taps in their bathroom, for instance, because contractors thought it was too difficult to take out the other 2 sets of taps. We don't want that type of thing. They need to be satisfied and they are paying to live in our homes. So it is a very difficult thing.
Okay, before you speak, I'm feeling we're going to start with the recommendation of the ongoing dissatisfaction of the council with the performance of Ian Williams based on the stats in front of us. I know you're saying, sorry, Anne, would you like to speak, Annalisa?
Yes, I would just like to share that we do have some green stats. So following on from this, so the tenant satisfaction survey in April was 82.73%. So I'm going to say that was 83% in April. And then it was 88.54% in May. So we're creeping up to that 90% target. We have seen that increase in satisfaction. If somebody's telling you they've got 3 sets of taps, please let us know. That's what we need to know about, and we need to be raising those as issues. Okay, that's been, as long as that's been recorded, that's great. So sorry, that was D5, and completely understand. No, that's because you've got the information from March. What I'm saying is the information we've shared with the Landlord Services Advisory Board. So yes, so in April, tenant satisfaction was 83%, and in May, it was 88.54%. Absolutely understand what you're saying about the targets. Yes, we wanted to try and make them more realistic. And what we've proposed coming forward is that's the average number of days to complete a repair. What's really important for us is to see the breakdown between an urgent repair and a routine repair as well. So although you'll get that one overarching where we're saying that we'll provide further information underneath that. So we want to make sure we're meeting the targets on those urgent repairs. And we have up to 28 days to complete a routine repair. I'm not saying we want to push everything out to 28 days. That's why we've got that target. And the comment about the contractors, yes, we have 2P. So if we go from one contract to another, if somebody's been providing, been employed by one company, they will be 2P'd to another company. I have been involved in those circumstances. We do refresher training. The new company have normally got their own vision and their own way of working, and they will do skills analysis and assess people's competencies and skills. So I have seen changeover in staff with different contractors coming on board and additional training to current staff that we may have seen before.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to go to Councillor Nicholson now and then move on to Councillor Higgins and Councillor Lawton.
Well, a lot of people want to speak about this. I spoke some time ago about setting up a small specific direct labour organisation. What I mean by that is to cover work where there are high volumes of work. And we're really talking about basic plumbing and basic electrical work. So this is not a massive organisation to be set up. This is a specific task groups who can reduce workloads where tenants are upset, or really it's where it's finding the right level where tenants are finding it acceptable, the waiting lists. So I think this is something we could look at. You need to employ a lot of people, just sufficient people to be kept busy. Thanks.
Thank you for your contribution, and that noted. Councillor Higgins.
Just to follow on Councillor Nicholson's last point, I did think, and Annalise might want to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it did feature in the next 12 months objectives to set up a little team in terms of repairs. So they did take it on board, the recommendation, which is great. Just before we come on to recommendation, and again, Annalise may want to come in on this, but my understanding is there is a review of the contract coming towards an end, what we do at the end of that, what we could learn from this, because I share Councillor Barcolomax's frustrations that it was only a single supplier. And I think maybe if we move to recommendations rather than just reinvent the wheel, maybe a progress update in terms of how that review is going. But again, Annalise might want to come in and correct me on that.
No, that is correct. We are doing a review, and I must say that, you know, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee have been instrumental in helping us with the reviews that we've been doing and the progress we've made. So I just want to thank you for that ongoing scrutiny. And it is on your forward plan to come to you in September, so we'll be able to share an update then.
Okay, Councillor Lawton.
It's just a question of process, actually. We are talking about January to March information, and yet we know we have in the building information which goes up to May. Is there any reason why we can't use more up-to-date information? It just doesn't make any sense to be talking about information which is 3 months old, knowing there's more recent information.
Yeah, agreed, especially if it's good news. Annalise, is there any reason why?
It's because you're receiving the quarterly update, which is the corporate quarterly report, which, as you've seen, has the breadth of the whole council, and the Landlord Services Advisory Board get monthly operational data, and we have that as an exception report. But I don't see any reason why you can't request that you get that exception report added to your agenda, or Councillor Lawton could feedback, or myself feedback to this committee on that information, if the timings look really strange.
Okay, thanks. I mean, on the basis of what we've got in front of us, I think we do need to put some sort of comment expressing our unhappiness about the contractor, the performance of Ian Williams, in the hope that we will be seeing some improved numbers. Is that agreeable to everybody? I think, Chris, are you able to pick that up as a recommendation? That's our first one.
I think it would be handy if there was a formal way of words. It's for the committee to ultimately put their wording together so that I can then feed it back.
Okay, Well, I think we need to express our ongoing disappointment as to the performance. Councillor Weldon, do you have a suggestion?
I think that's fair enough, but I think we should also note our appreciation for the improvement that's coming in.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yes, that we do note some improvement in some of the key indicators, but we continue to express our concern at the high number of days to complete repairs, the percentage of jobs not completed within 28 days, and the tenant satisfaction are still at a low level. And we would appreciate continued focus on these important areas. This, of course, is then quite separate to the new contract or whoever. So we are tending to mix the two together, whereas we ought to be. And in September, we will be looking at progress towards where we're going with the new contract. But I think there has been some improvement, and we should note it. But we express continued concern at high levels of dissatisfaction and poor KPIs.
However, correct me if I'm wrong, Annalisa, the current contract only ends in 2027. So nothing's going to change in terms of the current contractor until that time. And by which time the world would have changed anyway. So I'm not quite sure where that leaves us, but
I think that's a very good point, Andrew. The next point, second sort of recommendation I'm feeling from the committee is a genuine dissatisfaction with the way that the current contract is structured and the lack of the fact that we've got two options. So I think, could we draft some sort of recommendation along the lines of council, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, strongly recommend a more agile or dynamic structure going forwards, which recognises competitive two competing companies, you know, something like that. I think do we all agree that we feel that sanctions for non-performance should be considered in the future as well? Yes, I think that's a yes from everybody. And Mr. Councillor Lawton?
well, yeah, I agree with you. And maybe Annalisa just needs to give your view, but my understanding is the current contractor can only be fired for non-compliance, not for poor performance. So, you know, unless that happens, I don't know what a recommendation is going to change.
Just suggest we're feeding in now to the process to select for the next cycle or for the new appointment. So it would be perfectly reasonable for this committee to, based upon the evidence that we have seen here, that in the future we would want to see two contractors appointed rather than one, that more stringent terms and conditions be applied for poor performance. And that should be reflected in our next round, whether it's Waverley or our successor or whoever. We need to introduce an element of competition, and we need to have better control over poor performance with conditions which enable us to enforce fines or enforce improvements. I mean, I'm sure that that's being covered anyway, but it's something which would be reasonable for this committee to say. Something along those lines I would be happy with.
Spoken like an excellent ex-chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I think you've summarised that better than I did. So if are you able to note that it is important that we get this right next time, isn't it? I think that's the sentiment that's coming from you all very strongly. Councillor Murray, and then we probably really do have to move on.
I just want to clarify, when is the KPI review we're going to happen, and will it come to this committee, or is it something is it an internal thing? So if you could just clarify that.
So we are going through that process at the moment. We have tried to get a date in the diary to go through the KPI, have a discussion, an informal discussion with this committee and the services. So we are trying to get that date in the diary as soon as possible.
But it will come to committee before a decision is made to, or will you make decisions and then come to the committee and say, this is what we think? I'm not 100% sure.
So what we would like to do is engage with this committee prior to us bringing the next report, but that'll all depend on whether we can get a date in the diary. We are trying to get that done as soon as possible, but obviously we need to keep to reporting deadlines.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But you were talking about looking at the KPIs and changing them. So will you be, before you decide to change what the goalposts are, if you like, or the scores or the KPIs, will you be coming to this committee and the other services committee to talk to them about what you propose and get their feedback and say, well, this, or is it going to be internally you decide what the new KPIs are going to be, and then you present them to us? How is this change of KPIs going to come along, Jenny?
So what we would like to do is come to this committee and ask for you to discuss them with us, for you to share what you would like to see, and then they need to be approved by the executive. That obviously is dependent on if we can get a date in the diary before we need to produce the next report.
Okay, I might be able to help because I know Carol and I have been contacted about a date, initial date to set up a meeting. I'm taking it means we'll have to have like an extraordinary O&S committee meeting. Is that what you're saying? After that point, informal one?
So yeah, it will be a meeting, but an informal one, not in public session.
Okay, thank you. Does that help? Right.
And I think rather if you'd rather do it collaboratively and agree than just try and rush it, within for the next meeting.
But Chairman, I think it's important to note that this isn't just our report, it's Waverley's quarterly performance report, which goes to the executive, goes to officers, and it comes to us. So it's not just something which we look at.
So there is a rush to do it, unfortunately, because as has been alluded to a couple of times this evening, there's no value in us bringing a quarterly report a long time after the quarter has ended. We need to see it timeously so that it's valuable to scrutinize. Otherwise, the data we bring you is out of date and no longer relevant. So the sooner we do it, the better.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Right, should we move on to the next agenda item, which is the draft affordable home strategy? The information in front of you is in three parts, really. We're going to have an agenda. We're going to have a presentation, and then we've got the agenda item itself and the recommendation. And then after that, we've got the strategy, which I'm sure we've all read in great detail and memorized. So over to you for the presentation. Thank you very much, Esther.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk through the slides that were circulated with the agenda just briefly. I won't take too long on this because I think it's really important that we have quite a lot of time for discussion. We're coming to this overview and scrutiny committee as part of the formal consultation period, which runs until the 21st of July. So if anything springs to mind after this meeting, please do send us an email and we can incorporate it. We've appreciated a few of the committee have contacted us in advance with specific things they'd like raised. So I'll try and address those as I go through. Thank you. So the first slide is just mugshots of Alice and I with our contact details. Just get in touch with us if you have any queries on this. We're both part-time, but we're a small team of two. And our role is to work with planners, with housing associations, and with Waverley's in-house development team to try and enable affordable homes to come through to eventually be built out on site. And you may have read our previous strategy, which was called Build More, Build Better, Build for Life. This sums up the work of our team, really. I know we had a query about the performance against the previous strategy, and I hope you might have received in the meantime the progress updates.
Yeah, just to confirm, we all received it by email today, and we've got hard copies now as well. So thank
Okay.
you, Esther.
Thank you. No, that was a really useful suggestion. I'm sorry that didn't come out originally because that context probably was needed to bring it to life. But I think one of the biggest successes of the previous strategy was looking at affordability for low-income working households and the caps on affordable rents that we introduced through that strategy. So as a result of some affordability evidence at that time, when we did the previous strategy, we realised that 80% of the market rent, which is what the government called, excuse me, an affordable rent, that just wasn't affordable here. So then through a subsequent update to the Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning document, we've now capped those at affordable levels for local people. So that's 70% of the market rent for 1 or 2 bed homes and 65% for 3 bed homes. So I think when we look back at the last strategy, that's just one of the examples where we feel it's made a real kind of tangible difference to applications coming through the planning system. The other key bit of our work that we're doing at the moment is working very closely with the planning policy team on the evidence base for the next local plan. So fingers crossed by the time this strategy is adopted, which the final adoption would be scheduled for December for council, I think, just because of the way things fall. We may have the new housing and economic development needs assessment in the public domain. That's the hope. We're not sure yet. It's being revised and looked at with planning, but we do hope at that point to bring that out to all members like we did last time with our housing affordability study. It was really good to run a sort of forum workshop for councillors looking at affordability, because I think that brought it to life last time. And I think this one, I'm looking at the slide, why do we need a new housing strategy? I think the affordability and the cost of living crisis have not gone away. So despite the work of the past few years, we're still facing huge waiting lists, homelessness. There's a huge need for new affordable housing. And since that last strategy, we've had a wealth of new evidence. We've got the HEDNA, the Economic Development, Housing and Economic Development Needs Assessment that I just mentioned. That will give us some affordability data, but alongside that, we can look at our waiting lists. We can look at a lot of evidence coming out of Surrey County Council now. They've updated their joint strategic needs assessment. So we do quite a lot of work with adult social care, looking particularly at needs for older people and people with disabilities. We've also had, well, hot off the press last week, the government's put out this decade of renewal paper, which is a long-term 10-year plan for affordable housing. And that's something that we're looking at, and I'm sure we'll briefing members in more detail, but that's to do with ramping up capacity for local authorities to deliver. We're obviously already doing it, but I think nationally they are looking for councils to really start building again to get that kind of post-war level of new affordable housing, really increase the numbers. And that's something that we're looking to do as well locally, which I'll come on to in a minute. We are also writing this now in the context of the new Waverley and Guildford joint corporate strategy. So we've, within the executive report, which I think you had annexed, I just set out the ways in which this hits this piece of work we feel does touch upon each of those 5 themes. So we're working towards sustainable, energy efficient, affordable homes, which is a more sustainable borough. The positive impact of affordable housing, particularly social rented homes, on the local economy in terms of low paid workers being able to live locally, because you cannot expect your supermarket workers and your delivery drivers and your school teacher and everything to commute very long distances to work. You need to live locally for those jobs. And so we need to have the housing that supports the economy. A more inclusive borough, that's certainly helped by this strategy, because affordable housing helps alleviate poverty, and there is evidence that certain groups are more likely to access affordable housing than others, particularly women and minority ethnic groups as well. The decent and affordable homes priority and the corporate strategy, well, that's got this written all over it. And then the resilient and well-managed council priority, we are looking again at, you know, how can we fund the homes that we need to build? If we're wanting to ramp up our council new build programme, what clever ways can we do that? How can we borrow to do that? And can we make attractive bids to Homes England to access some of this new grant that's been announced? Because we know there's going to be 39 million across the next programme. And we would really like to attract that investment into Waverley, both through our own new build programme, but also supporting the bids of our housing association partners as well, so that they could get some of that funding to build here. So the new strategy is written with the forthcoming local government reorganisation and our collaboration with Guildford in mind. So we're looking at working much more closely with partners, joining up on projects where we can, and definitely building on those links with health. And I think as and when the LGR finally happens, to be in one authority with adult social care is a positive thing for housing, because we do have those links already, but it makes complete sense. You know, we look at their evidence, they ask us about our needs. We want to make sure that we're continuing to work together. So that's the idea. And the time scales, there's a slide that you've got there with a timeline. We're bang in the middle of the consultation period now, well, coming towards the end. We have seen the Waverley Tenant Panel. We're meeting individually with housing associations and staff teams. We're also hoping to sort of get some individual feedback from people, and including, you know, this committee, but also Landlord Services Advisory Board we're going to in a couple of weeks' time as well. And we just want to encourage all feedback, especially if you think there's something we've missed, because I think we're trying to keep this a slim strategy. We're trying to make it really clear what the intention is, and then the action plan obviously needs to go into a lot more detail. But if there's something that you think is missing in the action plan, please do raise it. I think we've had some useful suggestions already. Councillor Murray, I know you raised about the rent, the Airbnb kind of issue, the issue of short-term lets and the impact that that has on private rented sector supply. And so I think we want to look at housing supply in the round. And although this strategy focuses on new build social housing, affordable housing, actually our housing needs teams are also referring people onto private rented accommodation. And, you know, we need to make sure the whole housing market is working locally. So the plan is to come back in the autumn to executive and then back to full council in December. And we are ongoing throughout this, looking at all of the updated evidence coming through. So we've got the national 10-year housing plan, and also hot off the press last week is a 10-year NHS plan as well. So we've got lots of reading. They seem to be putting out the 10-year plans at the moment. And it's quite exciting. Some of the work that's happening with health is quite forward thinking, and housing is now being recognised as one of the wider determinants of health outcomes. So there's a piece of work going on linked in with the University of Surrey that Alice and I have volunteered to sort of feed into that research. So it's called the Health Determinants Research Collaboration, and that was some funding that they got to start looking at really breaking down, you know, when people have poor health outcomes, how has it led to that? Are there any factors that are preventable? Because they're not all preventable, but housing is actually something we can influence, you know, give a child a bedroom to do their homework in, help people into employment, make sure that homes are warm, safe, well insulated, and that, you know, that bills, I think those new technologies as well, lower residents' bills. So it's financial well-being as well, isn't it? That if you're in a home where you've got all the right energy efficiency equipment, it's all up to date, then you're going to spend less on your energy. So I think those are the main bits of evidence that I wanted to highlight to you. We've got a slide here on the hierarchy of needs and why we need a home, which I won't repeat to you because you'll all know about that. But I think when we try and argue to, argue for funding, we do make the argument that Waverley is unique. We're an expensive area. We've got a lot of older people, and we also know that the benefit of building more affordable homes does benefit the economy. So there's been this yellow slide you've got is a piece of research that was done by the National Housing Federation and Shelter, and it was looking at the sort of savings to the public purse overall of affordable housing and trying to quantify, you know, for each affordable home you build, what do you actually save long term? And it's difficult to do, but there clearly are educational benefits. There are benefits of getting people into employment, positive health outcomes, reduced homelessness, reduced benefits bills. And also if we're designing homes that are safe and new developments that are designing out crime, then you'd have lower policing costs as well in the long term. So we think there's a real economic argument for being able to increase our house building. So this draft that's coming before you has been refined with both planning and housing portfolio holders and the leader, because it straddles both areas. There's really strong links with planning, and we particularly wanted to, well, members particularly wanted to carry through the ambition to lobby government for a better system. So even though we have got these new long-term strategies, there are some things that, you know, potentially in planning and things like the right to buy, the government are trying to tackle these issues which are perhaps preventing people accessing homes, but we want to continue to lobby. And we have had some positive traction with our professional body, the Chartered Institute of Housing, also with MHCLG and Homes England, in terms of a problem that's come up in the last year or so, where some housing associations are no longer taking up what we call Section 106 units, the portion of a planning application that's meant to be affordable housing. So it would be 30%. Taking on those 30% for various reasons has been difficult for our housing association partners due to viability and lots of other reasons that are constraining them. And we've been speaking quite regularly through Surrey roundtable events to government about this, and it is positive because the last page of this new plan specifically addresses that. So they are, you know, really hoping to kickstart that again, so that Section 106 affordable housing element is delivered, because we can't afford for those to stall. That will then hold up the whole development. So that's what we're aiming for. So the three priorities in this new strategy: number one is a healthy supply of decent and affordable homes. And that focuses on ramping up the numbers. So really getting the waiting list down by increasing the delivery. And the bit that we've got the most control over is our Waverley Borough Council new build homes. So although we work with housing associations and we can help enable, we can't ultimately control what they deliver. Whereas our own programme, it's brilliant that we can. We've got Louisa Blundell and her team, which has grown, and they are aiming to more than double the amount of house building that they've been doing. The previous strategy for 2022 to 25 had a target of 20 new homes per year, and this next one is 50 homes per year. So it's ramping up, and we obviously need to make sure that we've got the finances in order to do that. So that's the first priority, is making sure that we are delivering that healthy supply. It's also making sure that we're making the best use of our existing stock. So where we have existing stock, not new build, and it's perhaps not being used to its best, if we have households under occupying a large family home, for example, it's making sure that our new development programme is delivering attractive downsizing type homes that could then free up the bigger homes. So it's just making sure there's that movement through the stock. The second priority is called healthy communities, healthy environments. That is where we've got all of our energy efficiency ambitions in there. We also want to be creating communities that are sustainable, they're mixed. The affordable housing is, nicely not pepper potted, but clustered through the development. So it's not all stuck in one corner by the electricity station. We're looking at planning applications as they come in to make sure that those communities are really integrated and affordable homes can face the private market homes as neighbours. So that's where this strategy sort of sets the ambition. And then as the new local plan develops, we will no doubt have another affordable housing supplementary planning document that firms that up through planning. So that's how we, with the capped rents, that's how we did it. We introduced the ambition in here, and then it got formalised as a planning material consideration through the SPD. The third one is a healthy economy and a more prosperous borough. And this is touching on the bits I mentioned earlier about supporting local workers, making sure that we can house the people who are sort of running our local community. Surrey County Council particularly still have a problem attracting care workers to care for the growing older population. So it's sort of looking at making sure we've got the right types of homes to support the economy. And for rural villages, there are special exceptions where we can justify, with the support of a parish council, a small rural exception site for local people with a connection to the parish. And that can help, for example, keep post offices, schools open, local shops, also enable family members of different generations to give and receive support by staying in the same area. Because we know that often it's the younger generations who need to move out of an area for affordability reasons, when actually they would really like to stay. So I've covered the corporate strategy links, and I think what we're asking the O&S for today is just, I suppose, any issues that you would like raised, because I'm sure that this strategy will be rewritten before the autumn. We'll be adding bits to it, especially from feedback already from the tenant panel, etc. So anything that you would like to see in here, and we've already had a few by email, but also any areas of concern about affordable housing delivery, or any questions really. And I hope I've sort of given a gist of it, but if anything's not clear, please do ask questions. And we've got Annalisa and Claire here from Housing and Planning as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. That was very interesting, actually. We can see in point 18, actually, of the agenda item, page 111, the suggested issues for overview and scrutiny, which you've just outlined. So to invite O&S to comment on the consultation, which opens on the 9th, so it's already been open for a month, and to invite O&S to raise any issues of concern. I suppose I just want to kick things off by asking, how many people have responded to the consultation? I went and checked it was there today and open, because obviously I think it's worth also pointing out that this was originally going to be scrutinised by overview and the services committee, and so you can see some reference to that in the paper. That is why but it was due for the 23rd of June, and as we know, that was quite a busy night for them. So that's why we are scrutinising it now. So this went to the executive, I believe, in June. And so perhaps you could just let me know who's responded to the consultation, and I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Chair. Alice, I don't know if you're able to see in commonplace. So what we've got is two things we're doing. We're doing lots of focus groups, workshops, and speaking. So we've seen the tenant panel and we've seen various individual housing associations. The commonplace survey, I haven't checked today who's replied. I don't know. Alice remotely might be able to check, so we might be able to come back later. Okay. But we will do some chasing up as well, towards the end of the period, in terms of specific partners that we were hoping to hear from that we didn't. There's one useful sort of developer forum that we've contacted, and we're hoping to hear from developers as well on this, and not just the housing associations, but we'll come back and confirm if that's okay on that one.
Thank you, Esther. I've had one from Councillor Martin, then Councillor all of you. Let's start with Councillor Martin, then Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. And yes, this is a really important area for us to consider. And I was interested to see the performance that we've had recently. In this performance that you sent us recently, or I got it on Friday, I see that we only had 6 completions on council-owned land in the year 2024-25. Is that really so? And this also then comes into some of the quarterly performance reports, where we actually have some of the homes delivered, and I do see in the quarterly performance report, which we didn't dwell on, but there were 4 affordable homes delivered in the Q4 period. So does that mean that there were only 2 homes delivered in the whole of the 9 months before, or am I misunderstanding that data?
Thank you, Councillor Martin. So the council owned land, that would be Louisa's programme, and I think they are coming in bursts. So we do, you know, with Oxford Bridge and things, we've had sort of big numbers and then a lull. So I'd be able to get some more detail from Louisa on when the next, you know, when the next ones are due. But that is correct. They were the final completions, and that's linked to sort of building control sign off. So when we do the stats, that's why sometimes, you know, some years we get an absolutely bumper year, and with this past year was 239 affordable homes completed overall, but the vast majority of those with housing association partners this time. But I'd be able to get further detail from Louisa on what's coming up next year, if that's helpful.
Okay, I mean, so thank you for that clarification, because my overall question is, the document is very interesting, but I think that it perhaps would benefit by a greater clarity on how the housing is provided. You know, you look at this and you think of affordable homes, and well, you know, some of us tend to think of social housing and our social housing, but actually it's much wider than that. I think in this document, and of course it's more clear in the base strategy, but it would be helpful to identify how affordable homes are provided. You know, if you're looking at that, and the importance of providing our own housing, and we're actually not doing a very good job, are we? 20 per year for the last 3 years. If we get up to 50 per year, I mean, we've got 4,800, but over the period of the next 3 years, if we achieve that, we'll put in 150 extra houses on top of our 4,800, which in the great scheme of things doesn't seem very ambitious. So I would like to see a bit more clarity in this about where all these homes come from. And I do note that, of course, collaboration is important. Collaboration with developers, and I note that in the forward from the leader of the council on page 119, he then talks about our housing system needs health and well-being to be put before profits and so forth. But then, on the other hand, the bulk of the affordable homes are indeed to be provided by developers who make profits. And so it's a bit, you know, on the one hand, he's bashing the developers. On the other hand, it seems to me that he needs them. And we all need them. So I think greater clarity there as to where these are coming from. Are we satisfying the need? You know, we know that we want more, but how many more? You know, what is there? You have lots of statistics of the waiting list and so on and so forth, but where are we in terms of fulfilling the need to provide affordable homes? Is the demand getting greater, even though we're trying harder? So a little more detail on that, I think, would be very helpful. And then my second area of concern is really sustainability. You know, we talk about becoming by 2030 we will meet our objectives, but we all know that we won't meet any of our objectives as far as housing is concerned. What happens with the new houses that are being created now? Are they going to category C? But to get to category A, well, we'll never do that in my lifetime. I know my lifetime is now quite short, but you know, we talk about sustainability, but I don't really believe it because we don't seem to be doing it. So my big concern is it's a lot of lovely words about sustainability and achieving objectives by 2030, but in a housing context, I mean, that's for the birds, isn't it?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, can I just on that point really that's been raised about numbers, I just want to add, it's very interesting to look at the previous document versus this one. For example, that one said to complete 400 affordable homes over the 3 years, 60 Waverley, which I presume is where you're getting your 20 per annum, and then 340 by other providers. It'd be good to understand how much of that has actually been delivered, and then how much of it is sort of rolled over into this document. How much of that is the 150? So I'm
Yeah,
Claire.
maybe if I come in and maybe pick up on some of the questions. Obviously, the delivery of affordable housing, yes, as a council, we deliver a small part of that affordable housing, but the bulk of affordable housing, as is the case in all authorities up and down the country, is delivered through the planning system. And the amount we deliver is very, very carefully worked through the local plan preparation process, and it will be partly driven by viability. And as those of you who sit on planning committees know, sometimes we have to make really, really tough decisions around the ability to deliver versus the ability to deliver the percentage of affordable housing set out in policy. So those are all things that, as you all know, we are going through the process again as we look at the new local plan. And you also all know that we've got a really, really significant increase in the number of homes per se that we need to provide, which in part will be driven by the percentage of those that will be affordable housing. All the evidence base that we're preparing will help support what that number is going forward and how that matches against the housing need that exists not only now in this borough, but, you know, going forward. And in part, it ties into questions like Councillor Gale has raised this evening about how come we've got vacancies for professional staff within the council. It's about how we match the need within our economy, the supply of labour force against the housing need. So it's all quite complex and difficult. And it's all a journey that we're going on together as we prepare the new local plan with the support of colleagues across the council and outside the council. In terms of the sustainability question, in part we are driven by the planning system and the building control system. And the building control system is sort of the system that sets out the sustainability criteria that developers have to build to. And there are opportunities going forward to look at how we might want to lift those requirements through policies in the local plan. And obviously, as a council housing stock holder, we have the opportunity that we exercise to build above the sort of minimum standards set down by building control. So hopefully, without going on too much, that gives you sort of an idea of how this all knits together and the really important role that this housing strategy plays as we start preparing for a new local plan and ambitions as our housing team move forward with their important work.
Thank you. That is helpful, Claire. I'm going to come back on that numbers thing, but before, you don't need too much of me talking. Who was next? It was Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. This is really a massive problem, and I'm very, very concerned. First of all, though, I want to express my appreciation and gratitude for the team that have, for the ambition in the document. It's really good to see. However, I have two problems. The first one is this very word, affordable. The fact is, in terms of genuine affordability, it really doesn't mean anything at all here in Waverley. If the median market price relative to median local incomes is something like 17 or 18. That's an enormous ratio. Now, we heard earlier that the definition of affordable for a three-bedroom house is something like 65%. Talk round numbers, 2/3 of 18 still brings it down to a ratio of 12. That is not affordable for local workers. It really isn't. And so that's what we are saddled with. But it is a major problem. Even when we're talking affordable, it's not genuinely affordable. I did once read about something, I have no idea whether this is realistic, but I did read some time ago of a council, I think it was in East Anglia somewhere, which had completely changed its definition of affordable to one based on market rents, to one based on local incomes. It's a lovely idea, but maybe not feasible. However, let's leave that aside. All I want to say, it's a major problem, and I welcome anything we do to ameliorate it, but we're not getting there. My second observation is this whole question, and I agree with Councillor Martin and with the planning ahead. We are also dependent on the private sector, on developers to provide affordable housing. However, it's rather too easy for them to wriggle out of it. I want to share a story that we heard in a recent planning meeting concerning one development, which is actually in the detailed listing up in Hindhead, and Councillor Davidson will know about it. A significant development where the developer came back to us and said, really, the viability calculations show that we cannot afford to develop, or to provide affordable housing. They produced all the documents to say it's not affordable, not viable. So we agreed, and it came before the planning committee as 4 units that we were developing ourselves. The observation made by the other councillor for that area pointed out that those houses were now completed. The houses provided by the developer were completed on the market at a price substantially higher than was built into the viability assessment. I think we'd be taken for a ride. We really have to find a way to avoid that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just looking for the section where the viability bit is addressed. Maybe you could help me with the page number. Just see if there's any further recommendation as to whether we're happy with the wording on that. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just respond on the affordability point as well? 'Cause something I should have mentioned in the overview was specifically social rent. So I talked about the affordable rent caps. The product affordable rent has been around, I think, since 2011. The government brought it in to kind of bring in extra income to then fund new affordable housing. But historically, council housing has been just social rent, which is based on a target formula from, what is it, Annalisa, 91, 99? It's worked out differently, but that is really genuinely affordable for local incomes. And I think what's coming through government now, both in the revised national planning policy framework that came out in last December, where, what does it say? Local planning authorities should consider the particular needs of those who require social rented homes, and we could set policies, you know, based on that in the next local plan if there's evidence for that. But also the new government plan as well is prioritising social rent and suggesting that 60% of new affordable homes should be for social rent. So this is not the higher affordable rents, this is the lower one. So clearly this 39 billion that's coming through is aimed at getting those lower, whether you want to call it genuinely affordable or, but you know, the really ones that local people can afford. So I think there's hope that there will be more social rent. But in terms of viability, I would say that's going to be addressed through planning. And we have got that's not covered very much in this strategy, and that's deliberate because that is covered in the affordable housing supplementary planning document, which is sort of linked to the local plan. So we have to be quite careful what we say on viability here. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. We found it, page 132, to ensure council has access to professional independent advice, scrutinise and robustly challenge every planning application that makes a viability case to reduce or change the tenure. So that's on the point that Councillor Weldon raises. And thanks for commenting. That's in the supplementary document. I need to take a look at that. Can I take Councillor Gale next, and we'll keep going?
Yeah, this is really affordable social, what I wanted to say, because we would like to free up some of the larger homes that we have for families where we've got maybe 1 or 2 elderly people living in a larger home. The only problem I've heard of recently is some of the new housing, and I think this may have just been covered, is affordable rent, whereas the older property, which is proper council housing, is social rent. So somebody wanting to swap homes where there is a young couple who have got an increasing family in an affordable rent want to swap with somebody who's in a social rent, that doesn't happen because the people in the social rented property don't want to have to pay more for a smaller property. I think we need to look at this because social rent is obviously lower. and the developers are insisting on the affordable rents. And I know we have hammered them down to 75 or 60%, but I think we need to do more work on that. And one question, the houses which are truly Waverley houses that are being built, I think we've got 6 here on this document in front of me. Are they actually social rent or are they going at affordable rent? So I'm just wondering what our actual houses are going for now. Thank you.
Can I pass that over to you, Esther? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gale. So Waverley's own programme, like the housing associations, it is now a mix. So our aspiration is to lead by example and, you know, provide social rent wherever we can. But we have had to look carefully at the mix on each new site. And sometimes it's a case of cross-subsidising with a few shared ownership units to get the social rented units. Other times we've gone for the capped affordable rents. So Waverley won't be doing the 80% rents, you know, we're not allowing those anymore. And we're hoping to do social rent wherever we can, but we have delivered some of the capped affordable rents.
Yeah. So where we see that we've actually got actual Waverley homes being built, not through a developer, are they social rent or are they affordable rent?
So it's on a site-by-site basis. So we've, for some schemes, depending on the viability, when Louisa gets a new site, she has to use her software and stack up the viability over a sort of business plan term. And wherever possible, you know, Alice and I will have a conversation at an early stage and say, can we make social rent work here? And very often we'll, you know, get over lots of hurdles to do that. And in some cases, to make the scheme stack up, we have also provided the affordable rent. So there's not a blanket policy, but the aspiration is always to do social wherever we can.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we're saying these are genuine council properties, council built houses, it should only be social rent because, you know, otherwise we're only matching what the developers that are building these affordable homes are doing. We should be striving to have these properties at the lowest possible rent we can, to bring in our people that we need to live locally. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's worth us noting as a comment, really, if we're building the houses. Now we've got, who's next? Should we go? If Councillor Nicholson. Yes, we go around the table.
Okay, thank you. I'll be quick. No, I do welcome this report. Actually, I've got a comment and a question. But the comment is, I do welcome this report. It's clear and concise. It's great. And it's in contrast, I think, to some consultant reports we read where they could possibly be paid for by the word. This is a comprehensive report. I mean, together with planning, housing is a main function of the council. So I'm pleased to see it covers all types of social and affordable housing and the who and the how. So you have details about this. The other point is tenure. Tenure is so important. I mean, this is equally important to rent because if you have tenure, it means families have stability and there's also neighbourhood cohesion. So that's a very important point. My fourth point has been covered by Councillor Weldon. It's something which we talk about in Hazelmere. So that's, I won't continue on that one. My question is, what is happening with the Dunsfold scheme? Now, for such a large scheme, I thought it was very good. I thought it was well planned. And then, of course, sadly, after we put an access road in, the land was all then sold off to someone else. I mean, are they still thinking about these sort of things, or possibly using the original blueprint for what was done before?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to note. I noted that was something that was in the 22 to 25 plan, but isn't in the current plan. So I'll leave that, Claire.
Yep, I'm happy to come in on that one. So on Dunsfold, the Trinity are still the landowner. They are currently working with us and the Environment Agency on the remediation strategy that needs to be, if you like, the first thing that we agree to enable the site to move forward. The site hasn't moved forward as quickly as we originally anticipated, and that's due to a legal matter between the landowner and the previous landowner, which is nothing you know, something outside the council. But there is a permission that exists on that site that they have technically implemented in part. So the permission still stands, as does 106. So everything that we secured in 2015 is still there to be moved forward. Once they've completed all their work on the remediation strategy, and we've worked with the Environment Agency to agree those details and then move forward, subject to that legal dispute being resolved between the two interested parties.
Okay, I will take Councillor Higgins next, and then we'll get through you all.
Thank you, Chair. Pages 126 and 127 obviously map out the fact we're looking to build 150 affordable homes, and it's sort of on the right hand side it sets out council owned land and the sites we're looking to build on. In Newhurst and Downhurst Road we did actually have a site with social housing, which unfortunately they've had to be demolished, but my understanding from Louisa with updates she's given me is that there was work, or there is work going on in terms of planning permission on that site, but it doesn't actually feature on this plan, and I'm wondering, due to its absence, whether I'm to assume that there's no plan to build within the next 3 years on that site.
Can I just add before you respond, just on expected achievements and outcomes, looking at that note, I see in order to achieve the 150 WBC new homes, Oxford Ridge Site C is included, and that's been sort of standing vacant, not quite completed, pending utility works. That's 30 homes. And the fairground site, Hazelmere, I mean, if that's in the 20 to 2028 plan, I mean, that hasn't even got planning permission yet. So it's just not going to happen by 2028, as far as I can see. Could you give some sort of, I just think in order to hit the this pledge of 150 new homes, I think it's reaching. Maybe you could comment on that in addition to Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Higgins. If it's okay, I will ask Louisa Blundell for a sort of written update, especially on the Downhurst Road. I mean, I think these sites are seen to be the most certain ones to come through within this period, but there are other sites that couldn't go on the public domain for sort of commercial confidentiality and things. So I will check with her and feedback on those individual sites that you've mentioned and get an update on the fairground as well. I think there's enough in the mix in Louisa's programme to meet that 150. So this isn't the sort of exhaustive list, but these were the ones that can be shared on this action plan at this stage.
Okay, that's interesting. Yes, look forward to receiving that. Can I pass over to Councillor Davidson?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to support and share the concern which Councillor Martin has raised about delivery 2030. I may be joining you. And also Councillor Weldon, the concerns about developers not actually delivering on real affordable houses. It just doesn't happen. And there is a considerable amount of I don't know, liberal use of the truth about their costs when they deny their ability to be able to provide affordable housing. But anyway, going back to my parochial environment, the Hind is mentioned. This is the development in the Hindhead, which been already mentioned by Councillor Weldon and also by you, Councillor Nicholson. Where are we at? One of the questions, my first question is, where are we at with those 4 houses? And I found, as I think Councillor Weldon pointed out, the prices for a really nasty end terrace, 3-bedroom, tiny bedrooms, £875,000 with a minuscule garden, probably no larger than the pit here. It's price inflation.
which sort of makes one feel slightly suspicious about their income or their profitability and why they can't produce affordable houses. We're supposed to be getting 4 houses up there, apparently. I think there was a news release about that some while back. But my other question is, what's happening with what you mentioned earlier on, Chair? The fairground development and way down car park development and the bits just behind there. That, if it goes ahead, is going to provide a considerable number of dwellings, not necessarily houses, but dwellings. The original thought way back beginning of last year was that we would be starting planning, permission and design and agreements this year. We're nowhere near there, which leads me to really rather doubt a 28 completion. It's, we've got a long way to go. And we've also got a situation as we won't exist then. So I really have concerns about the deliverability of this plan, and following up on what Councillor Weldon has said earlier on, the number of objections which we're likely to see around the fairground car park development in Haslemere. Now, we're into an HS2 scenario, to my mind. It'll just go on, and then it'll be killed because we're now part of a larger regional authority, which just doesn't have the interest, particularly in the tip of the region, half a mile away from West Sussex and East Hampshire. They're not going to be interested. Anyway, 2 questions then. The Hind and the viability of the fairground car park and the timescales which are going, I haven't seen a plan for it. It'd be nice if you could actually see a project plan at some early stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. The fairground, if it's okay, I'll defer to Louisa and come back because I don't want to give anything incorrect. I think we need to get the detail of the plan from Louisa. And on the Barron site, isn't it, Hindhead, the 4 units. So Waverley will be going ahead with those, and the developer has notified us that we should have the certificates of completion by the end of July. So they're pretty much done. So we'll be counting them in Q2, won't we, for July?
Could I, as a supplementary, if I may, Chair, can I ask what's going to be the cost to Waverley?
I'm sorry, I haven't got that information with me, but I can follow up with an email on it.
I think we're dealing with the affordable housing strategy team, so they don't have the full sort of background of all the projects and everything, but I think they're very valid points that you've raised. And certainly my concerns too, is that the action plan in this context is just not deliverable. A lot of these houses that are on this list. And I think we need to be realistic about what we can actually deliver. I also think that what was in the 22 plan in terms of action, it says it is actually more prescriptive and more helpful. It said 60% Waverley new build, 60 Waverley new build, 340 as in 85% by other affordable housing providers. I'd like to see something in that more like that in this document, which is a bit more prescriptive. I'm sensing to date, but we're not done with all of our comments, is that we're building up a recommendation about council striving for social rented houses whenever it can in terms of what it owns, and some really stringent interrogation of viability issues. We feel that we're not doing enough work on that, and that maybe needs to be emphasised more in the document. So who's next? Andrew, who would like to go next? Should we do Councillor Murray and then Councillor MacLeod? Is that okay?
Thank you, Esther and Alice, for a really good report. Found it really interesting. It's such an important issue, for lots and lots of reasons, for the economic reasons, for multi-generation families. I've got two sons who are now getting into their 30s. And I'd love them to live in Farnham or anywhere nearby, but it's really, really difficult. And I'm sure, you know, people of your generation, it's even worse, right? So it's really, really hard, and it's such an important thing. I think what we're talking about is rental accommodation. I don't think we're talking about buying houses and then, you know, selling them. You know what I mean? That's not what we're doing in that. But I think we're talking about rental accommodation. The one thing I mentioned with Esther was, surprisingly, and it's a bigger issue in lots and lots of other places around the country, certainly in the Lake District and Cornwall, and this is Airbnb, short-term rental, which are being used for to gain to make revenue out of. Now these are being taken out of the revenue, out of the full long-term rental market. So people like nurses and teachers and this can't rent them, and it's a bigger issue, obviously, in seaside towns, you know, Cotswolds, Lake District. But surprisingly, there's 336 in Waverley. Surprisingly, you would think, well, is it? But it's a nice place to live. People want to go here, right? So it's 336. So there you go. So you could somehow, and you can't stop them, but you know, in Scotland they brought in a licensing process, and I know there's legislation and there's lobbying going forward for central government to bring a licensing scheme where you have to then declare it as a tax revenue and all sorts of different things, right? So I would urge the council to lobby government to bring in a licensing scheme similar to Scotland here in England. And I believe, if I remember rightly, in the budget, and you may, Peter will probably tell me if I'm correct, but in the budget for 2026-27, for the next year's budget, we've added a 200% empty homes tax levy. Does anybody remember that? I think we agreed it at the budget meeting, I think, didn't we? And we couldn't do it this year, but for next year, there'll be a 200% tax levy. So that's a good thing. I know there's some planning issues as well, where people, you know, there's some legislation which we can do about planning. So I think the empty homes, the rental sector is something we should really look at very, very carefully. And I don't think this strategy really dug into that a little bit more. It could. And I think if you get 336 homes back on, that will go some way to your 400, which you're hoping to, you know, that's your ambition. But the other issue, if I could, and it's probably more for Claire, is when there is when you've got a big developer who says there's no viability for affordable housing, and then there's a commuted sum, I believe, and you negotiate this commuted sum, which can be spent in Waverley to buy affordable housing. And is that what you use that money for? So there's an example of a big, you know, a luxury development in the centre of the town, and you agree on this sum. Then can you buy? And then there's another developer in the town. They're building and they've got 30% affordable, and they've agreed it. Can you use that money, which is you've taken from that one developer in that town, and use it just to buy the affordable houses which are available on a different development, and say, well, we use them there and we bought it? And then what would happen with those developments? Would those affordable housing, do they then go exactly into social rent, or do they, what happens to that? To those housing? I think that would make a big difference, you know, certainly in our towns, I think, and certainly in Waverley. But I suppose it's more of a question for you, Claire, if you could enlighten me.
Yeah, so and just to go back to the Airbnb, that is being brought well and truly within the planning system, because some of the issues that have appeared in areas that have a significant tourist economy. And also it is now well and truly brought within the tax system, because of the way Airbnb actually register you and your VAT or tax codes. So I think we've probably covered that off. In terms of the viability, where we are collecting commuted sums, and it is last resort that we will collect a commuted sum, then we work sort of across the council, planning, Esther and Alice, who are now part of planning, and the housing development team to actually look at what is the best way of us actually using that commuted sum to deliver affordable housing. So it may be that we use that to purchase a house that's already built by a developer. It may be that it's somewhere else in the borough. So it may be collected in Godalming and we buy a house in Farnham. But the most important thing is that we are buying stock to enable someone to live in that house, rather than holding on to it and waiting for it to be in the right place across the borough. So that's how we work, and it's something that we've done some work in terms of improving our process to make sure that we are making those decisions and ensuring that we acquire property rather than holding the commuted sum.
Okay, it's 9:20, so we're going to keep powering on. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. I'll keep my questions fairly short. Two questions. One is that you mentioned a government fund, I think you said through Homes England, that we may have the opportunity to bid for. I'd just be interested to know what scale of funds are we talking about here if we are successful? What level of money would we be talking about that we could bid for? And how many houses that we'd be able to develop with that money if we, again, if we're successful? The second question is that you mentioned that there was a problem with some developments finding what they're called, the companies that do the affordable housing. I've just forgotten the name for them. The housing association. Thank you, John. The housing associations, finding the appropriate housing associations to take up the affordable housing. Is there an opportunity for Waverley to step in and do that job? And take up these houses that the housing associations don't wish to take on? That's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. So on the Homes England funding, I'm a bit hesitant to give sort of amounts in this public session. I would need to speak back with Louisa. So I know Abby Lewis and Ezra are in another O&S over at Guildford today, but they, you know, in terms of the detail of what Louisa will bid for, she's a strategic partner with Homes England already and has had successful bids in the past, and she will, I'm sure, you know, try and bid for as much as we can get. But I think you have to evidence what you're going to spend it on. So you have to have the sites lined up. And what's changed since the previous 22 to 25 strategy, and one of the reasons why we can now ramp the numbers up, is that Louisa has got approval to bid on these Section 106 developer sites. So Louisa is now out in the market and she can compete with housing associations to take on those units where it's in a location that we want it and it stacks up for us. So where we've gone up from 20 a year to 50 a year, looking ahead at sort of sites coming through planning and what Louisa might be able to bid on, we think that that is realistic, but perhaps that's not coming through in the action plan because we've not listed Section 106 sites, and that's sort of deliberate because we're out in the market trying to be commercial and bidding against others. So we're not going to put down what we're bidding on until it's certain. That's sort of not for the public domain, but yes, in theory, Louisa's got an extra capacity in her team now as well, specifically to be looking at these sites. So that's the area where she's hoping to grow. And it does need to be sites that meet our standards as well, because we've set Waverley development standards that are higher than the sort of standard building control and planning requirements, which makes it a bit more difficult for Louisa's team to just buy off the shelf. So it's ideal if they're involved a little bit earlier at the sort of pre-application stage so that they can influence the design a bit, and then it can meet our requirements and all of our energy efficiency requirements as well.
Thank you. If I can add a quick follow-up. I understand why you might not want to disclose exactly what you're bidding for, but could you remind me what the total fund is that we're talking about, the government's?
Sorry, they've announced 39 billion.
39 billion, okay. And are we talking about, without disclosing the amount of money, are we talking about an aspiration to build tens of more houses or hundreds of more houses? You know, just to give us an idea what the scale of our ambition is.
For Waverley?
For Waverley, yes.
For the council programme. So just for the next 3 years, we've set 50, And that was set, I believe, in the Lib Dem manifesto and before this new announcement of funding. So that's what's in this strategy. Whether that increases further, I think would depend on staff capacity, etc., and any funding that we get. But the 39 billion is over 10 years. So that's the long-term funding, and it will be released in chunks by Homes England. Nationally, 39 billion. Yeah.
Okay.
England for Homes England. Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. If I think I don't think anyone else has got any sorry, Councillor Lawton.
I promise it'll be very short and quick. Maybe I missed something, but what was your definition of social housing pricing? You defined affordability as 65 and 70% of 1 and 2 and 3 bed houses. What is the definition of social housing pricing? Thank you.
Thanks. We do have, I'm just trying to find my strategy now. We have a glossary and I'm hoping that we've got it in there. But when we talk about affordable housing, so there's affordable rent and there's capped affordable rent. And I think that's what you're saying there. But this did come up at executive as well, that we are a bit tied to the planning language. So when we say affordable housing, we're meaning everything under that umbrella that's defined in the National Planning Policy Framework. So that does cover affordable home ownership, shared equity, first homes, social rent, affordable rent. Is that in the glossary? There's no number.
There's no it's 10% of full market value or anything like that. No, it's just defined as social rent.
So it comes out at about 55% of the market rent, but it's not calculated based on the local market rent. It's a formula that we can definitely follow up by email, but I believe it's based on a historic value from the 90s, and then you work out your target rent. So it's not simple, but we can certainly follow up, and it works out about 55%. So definitely cheaper than affordable rent.
Microphone.
So on this page here, page 2, it says officers have successfully negotiated social rents, and in commas it says the lowest rents of all, equivalent to around 55% of market rent. Yeah.
Excellent to see Councillor Murray has forensically read his papers.
No.
That's very good.
It's on the front page.
If it's okay, I'd like to just put forward some of the comments that or sum up some of the comments that we'd like to put forward together. First of all, on as a council, we should strive for social rented housing, whereas in the homes that we are developing ourselves, or the dwellings. The thing about we must strive for stringent interrogation of viability issues, and there are concerns that we are not pushing that as hard as we could be at the moment. There are some serious concerns about the deliverability, or concerns about the deliverability of the plan, both in terms of the numbers of housing and in terms of meeting the 2030 targets. And just I think we would like more context in terms of splits of what Waverley's targets are, as opposed to those provided by other affordable housing providers. And then I've heard from a couple of you, and it's certainly reiterated by me, more context in view of LGR, because all of this report will be completed and then it will go into the big ether of a unitary authority. And how does it work? How is all of that going to work? I didn't see enough of that in the report. I think, is that fair from all of you? Okay, is there anything else I've missed? Thanks, Councillor Peter Martin.
I question the use of the word sustainability in the document, and the deliverability of the sustainability sort of objectives that are quoted in there from the corporate plan. I see a mismatch, because the casual observer would think, oh, we're going to meet the highest standards in terms of homes by 2030. It's very confusing. I think I think we just need to be a bit more honest in the way we define what we're going to do as far as sustainable homes is concerned.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from anybody else? I think, could we add in Councillor Martin's comments there about concerns over sustainability and the definition of sustainability in the document? Anything else? No. Well, you will be pleased to hear that that is essentially the end of our agenda tonight. Chris has suggested we might want to pencil in a date for the KPI meeting or informal meeting of the 22nd of July. If that is acceptable to everybody. I haven't checked my own diary, so I can't tell you myself. The 22nd of July.
Tuesday.
Could be. Yeah. Yeah,
What time was that?
it'll be an evening, 7 o'clock. Thank you all for being kind on my first chairing of this meeting. I declare this meeting closed. I'm going to get to use this now. There we go. Hey.